John Lennon stopped an entire concert for a crying teenager. What happened next left 10,000 in tears. The stage, a crucible of light and shadow where legends are forged and souls laid bare. For John Lennon, it was a familiar battlefield, a place where the roar of the crowd could be both a blessing and a curse. America, a vast, sprawling canvas where he had sought both reinvention and redemption. But even in the heart of its grandest arenas, the ghosts of his past and the volatile nature of fame always lurked just beyond the spotlight. It was a night like any other, or so it seemed. The air thick with anticipation, the hum of thousands of voices blending into a single, fervent prayer. The year, a blur in the relentless march of time, but the energy undeniable. John Lennon, a figure both revered and reviled, stood at the precipice of another performance. His music, a balm for some, a challenge for others, always carried the weight of his turbulent spirit. He had faced down governments, battled the press, and wrestled with his own inner demons. But the stage, with its unpredictable currents, held its own unique dangers. He walked onto that stage, a solitary figure against a backdrop of blinding lights. The cheers, a deafening wave, washed over him. Yet a part of him remained detached, observing. He saw the faces in the crowd, the adoring, the curious, the lost, each one a mirror reflecting a piece of his own fractured journey. He carried the scars of a life lived under an unforgiving microscope, the wounds of betrayal, the burden of expectation. He had learned to build walls, to project an image of cool defiance, even as the chaos of the world and his own mind threatened to consume him. A concert, more than just a collection of songs. It was a communion, a shared breath between artist and audience. But within that communion, there always existed a fragile line, a boundary of unspoken rules, a line that once crossed could shatter the illusion, revealing the raw, dangerous truth beneath the glamour. John knew this. He had seen the adoration turn to obsession, the love curdle into something darker. He understood the volatile alchemy of a crowd, how easily it could shift from worship to something far more sinister. And on this particular night, in an arena pulsating with 10,000 souls, that fragile line was about to be tested. A single thread, frayed by alcohol and a twisted sense of grievance, was about to snap. A moment, unforeseen and terrifying, lay coiled in the shadows, waiting for its cue. It would not be a clash of musical titans, nor a political statement. It would be something far more primal, far more human. A confrontation that would force John Lennon, the icon, to confront John Lennon, the man, in front of a stunned, silent multitude. The stage was set, not just for a performance, but for a revelation. And the world, unknowingly, was about to witness a scene that would redefine courage, compassion, and the true meaning of connection. The roar of the crowd was a beast, hungry and insatiable. It fed on the energy John poured out, demanding more, always more. He stood center stage, bathed in the harsh glare of the spotlights, his guitar a familiar extension of his soul. His voice, a raw, honest instrument, cut through the din, delivering lyrics that were both personal confession and universal anthem. He was a paradox, a man who craved peace, yet thrived in the eye of the storm, a prophet of love, often consumed by his own internal battles. This was John Lennon in America, a country that had both embraced and persecuted him. He had found a new home, a new life, yet the echoes of his past, the relentless scrutiny, the weight of a global legacy, never truly faded. Each concert was a delicate dance, a tightrope walk between the public persona and the private man. He gave them the rebel, the poet, the rock and roller. But beneath the veneer of cool confidence, a deeper current flowed, a profound sensitivity, a yearning for genuine connection, and a simmering vulnerability he rarely allowed the world to see. The arena itself was a cathedral of modern spectacle, Towering speakers, blinding lights, a massive video screen amplifying every gesture, every grimace, every knowing smirk. It was designed to create an immersive experience, to elevate the performer to something larger than life. But for John, it often felt like a cage, albeit a gilded one. He could feel the collective gaze of 10,000 pairs of eyes, each one projecting their own hopes, their own disappointments, onto his figure. He was a canvas for their dreams, a vessel for their nostalgia, and sometimes a target for their frustrations. He moved with a practiced ease, a veteran of countless stages, but his eyes, sharp and observant, constantly scanned the sea of faces. He saw the ecstasy, the sing-alongs, the raised lighters, but he also saw the shadows, the isolated figures, the ones whose adoration bordered on obsession. He knew the stories of those who blurred the lines, who saw him not as a man, but as an idea, a symbol, a property to be claimed. This knowledge, a dark undercurrent to his performances, kept him perpetually on edge, a warrior forever anticipating the next skirmish. His music, born from the depths of his soul, was his armor and his weapon. It was the language through which he communicated his deepest truths, his most profound questions. But even the most powerful song could not fully protect him from the unpredictable currents of human emotion, from the raw, untamed energy of a crowd. He had learned that fame was a double-edged sword, offering adoration on one side and a chilling, impersonal hunger on the other. And on this night, as the final chords of a searing guitar solo faded into the electric hum of the arena, that hunger, embodied in a single desperate soul, was about to make itself known, threatening to shatter the fragile peace he sought to project, and expose the very human heart beating beneath the legend. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without notice. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any of the exclusive content that's coming up. And while you're there, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. The music swelled, a wave of sound crashing against the stadium walls. John, lost in the moment, his eyes closed, poured his soul into the microphone. He was in that sacred space where artist and art become one, where the world outside faded into a distant hum. Then, a jarring discord. A sound, fragile and piercing, cut through the melody, slicing through the collective trance of the audience. It was a sob. Not a cheer, not a shout, but the raw, unmistakable sound of a broken heart. John's eyes snapped open. The music faltered, the band momentarily losing its rhythm. 10,000 heads turned, a ripple of confusion spreading through the arena. His gaze, sharp and instinctive, cut through the blinding lights, past the adoring faces, to a single point in the third row. There, a young girl, barely a teenager, stood amidst the swaying crowd, her face a mask of profound anguish. Tears streamed down her face, her body shaking with uncontrolled sobs, her small hands clutched tightly to her chest. She wasn't screaming for him. She was simply crying, a silent scream of pain that somehow impossibly reached him across the vast expanse of the arena. He had seen crying fans before, tears of joy, of excitement, of overwhelming emotion from the music. But this was different. This wasn't adoration. It was pure, unadulterated grief. Something about her pain cut through everything else, bypassing the layers of fame and performance, and reached straight into the raw, empathetic core of John Lennon. It was a mirror reflecting a part of his own fractured youth, a secret he carried, the deep, enduring wound of his own early losses, The times he had felt utterly alone and unheard. The band, confused by the sudden silence, gradually stopped playing. 10,000 people looked around, wondering what was happening. John, microphone still in hand, walked to the edge of the stage, his eyes never leaving the girl. His crew, accustomed to the relentless flow of a concert, exchanged bewildered glances. Stopping a show was unheard of, a breach of protocol, a disruption of the carefully orchestrated spectacle. "Hold on, folks," John said into his microphone, his voice calm, yet carrying an undeniable authority. "Just hold on for a minute." He set down his guitar, the feedback a soft hum, and pointed gently toward the crying teenager. "Ma'am," he called out, his voice imbued with a surprising tenderness. "The young lady in the blue shirt, in the third row. Are you all right, honey?" The girl looked up, startled, realizing that John Lennon, the legend, was talking directly to her. Through her tears, she shook her head, a silent, desperate no. The entire arena was now focused on this one girl, her raw vulnerability laid bare for all to see. You could feel the collective concern from 10,000 people who had gone from celebrating to witnessing something clearly heartbreaking. "What's your name, sweetheart?" John called out, his voice gentle. "Sarah," the girl managed to say, her voice breaking but carrying clearly through the arena's acoustics. "Sarah Miller." "Sarah," John said, his voice now a low, compassionate murmur. "I can see you're hurting. Can you tell me what's wrong?" Sarah Miller looked around at the thousands of people now staring at her, then back at John. Something about his genuine concern, the way he had stopped his entire show just for her, gave her the courage to speak. The first conflict was not an external threat, but the internal battle of a young girl's overwhelming grief. And John, by stopping the concert, had revealed a secret: his profound, almost paternal empathy, a depth of feeling he rarely allowed the world to witness. The stage was no longer just a platform for music. It was a confessional, a space where a hidden truth was about to unfold. The silence in the arena was absolute, a heavy, expectant hush. 10,000 people leaned forward, their collective gaze fixed on Sarah, then on John. The air crackled with an unspoken tension, a fragile moment where the spectacle of a concert had dissolved into a raw, human drama. Sarah, her face streaked with tears, her voice trembling, began to speak, her words amplified by the arena's acoustics, carrying her pain to every corner of the vast space. "My brother," she choked out, her voice breaking. He died last week. He was only 17. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. The weight of her words, the stark reality of her loss, hit everyone like a physical blow. The cheers, the excitement, the rock and roll energy of moments before now felt distant, irrelevant. This was real. This was grief, raw and unvarnished, laid bare on a public stage. John's face, usually a canvas of sardonic wit or cool defiance, softened visibly. His eyes, often sharp and guarded, now held a profound sorrow, a deep, empathetic understanding. He knew this pain. He had lived it. The loss of his mother, the fractured relationships, the ghosts of his own youth that still haunted him. He saw in Sarah not just a fan, but a reflection of his own past, a mirror of the boy who had once cried alone, unheard. "I'm so sorry, Sarah," John said, his voice a low, genuine murmur, filled with a tenderness that surprised even his own band. "What was his name?" "Michael," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Michael Miller. He loved your music, John. He played guitar, just like you. He always said he was going to be a rock star." The irony was heartbreaking. A young life full of dreams extinguished too soon. The tension in the arena was no longer about the disruption of the show, but about the profound weight of human suffering. John, the icon, was now simply John, the man, connecting with another human being in their darkest moment. Michael, John repeated, a thoughtful, almost reverent tone in his voice. A good name. And he loved music, you say? Like me? He paused, his gaze sweeping across the silent crowd. You know, Sarah, sometimes the best way to keep someone alive is to keep their dreams alive. To remember what they loved. He took another step closer to the edge of the stage, extending his hand towards her. Sarah, he said, his voice gentle but firm, I want you to come up here with me, right now. The request, though unexpected, felt utterly natural in the context of the moment. Security guards, initially hesitant, now moved with a quiet purpose, creating a path for Sarah through the stunned audience. People reached out, touching her arm, offering quiet words of comfort, a collective embrace of shared sorrow. As Sarah made her way to the stage, her trembling steps amplified by the hushed anticipation, the conflict deepened. It was no longer just Sarah's private grief, but a public confrontation with the fragility of life, the universality of loss. John, by inviting her onto his stage, was not just offering comfort, he was tearing down the invisible wall between performer and audience, between celebrity and common humanity. He was forcing everyone to confront the raw, unvarnished truth of pain and the profound power of connection. He helped her onto the stage, guiding her gently to a stool that a crew member had quickly brought out. The lights, once harsh and theatrical, now seemed to soften, casting a more intimate glow. John sat beside her, his presence a quiet anchor in the storm of her grief. The tension was palpable, not of fear, but of profound emotional resonance. 10,000 people watched, their hearts aching, as John Lennon, the legendary rebel, prepared to do something far more revolutionary than any protest song. He prepared to heal. The arena was a cathedral of hushed anticipation, every eye fixed on John and Sarah on the stage. Sarah, now seated beside John, her tears still flowing, but with a new, fragile composure, looked utterly overwhelmed. John, his arm gently around her shoulders, spoke into the microphone, his voice a low, comforting balm that resonated through the vast space. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his gaze sweeping across the silent multitude, I want you to meet Sarah Miller. And Sarah, like many of us, is carrying a heavy heart tonight. She just lost her brother, Michael, a young man of 17 who loved music and who loved life. A collective sigh, a wave of empathy, washed over the audience. The shared humanity in the room was almost palpable. This was the climax, the moment where the personal grief of one girl became the collective sorrow of thousands, and John Lennon, the icon, fully embraced his role as a conduit for healing. Sarah, John continued, turning to her, his eyes filled with a profound tenderness. Tell me about Michael. What was his favorite song? What did he dream of? Sarah, emboldened by John's unwavering presence and the silent support of the crowd, wiped her eyes and took a shaky breath. He loved Imagine, she whispered, her voice gaining a little strength. He said it was the song that made him believe in a better world. He used to play it on his guitar, even when he was just learning. He wanted to change the world, John, just like you. The mention of Imagine, John's most iconic anthem of peace and hope, in the context of such raw grief, struck a powerful chord. It was a stark reminder of the fragile line between dreams and reality, between hope and despair. John's jaw tightened, a flicker of his own pain, his own idealism crossing his face. He had poured his soul into that song, a vision of a world free from conflict, a world where love reigned supreme. And now, a young boy, inspired by that very vision, was gone. This was the darkest moment for John. The weight of his own message, the burden of his own hopes for humanity pressed down on him. He had preached peace, but the world remained brutal. He had sung of love, but loss was an inescapable truth. In Sarah's grief, he saw the echoes of every shattered dream, every unfulfilled promise, every life cut short. He saw the futility, the endless cycle of pain, and for a moment, the immense burden of his own idealism threatened to crush him. He closed his eyes, a deep, shuddering breath escaping him. The arena was utterly silent, waiting. Then, he opened his eyes, and a profound transformation occurred. The flicker of despair was replaced by a fierce, unwavering resolve. He looked at Sarah, then at the thousands of faces in the audience, and a new understanding dawned. The dream wasn't about perfection. It was about the continuous act of imagining, of striving, of connecting. He picked up his guitar, his fingers finding the familiar chords of Imagine. But this time, the song was not just a performance. It was a prayer, a lament, a defiant act of hope in the face of despair. He began to sing, his voice, usually sharp and clear, now imbued with a raw, emotional vulnerability that left the entire arena breathless. Imagine there's no heaven. As he sang, he looked at Sarah, and then in a move that stunned everyone, he gently placed his microphone in front of her. "Sing with me, Sarah," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Sing for Michael. Sing for all the Michaels." Sarah, tears still streaming, but a new light in her eyes, hesitated for a moment. Then, her voice shaky but clear, joined him. "It's easy if you try." This was the true climax, not a moment of violence, but a moment of profound shared vulnerability. John Lennon, the legend, had not just stopped a concert. He had opened his heart, shared his stage, and invited a grieving teenager to sing her pain into the collective consciousness of 10,000 people. And as their voices, fragile and powerful, blended in that iconic anthem, the entire arena began to sing along, a massive, spontaneous chorus of hope and sorrow. 10,000 people, tears streaming down their faces, united in a single heartbreaking yet ultimately hopeful melody. The secret revealed was the enduring power of music to heal, to connect, and to transform grief into a shared act of remembrance. The sound of 10,000 voices blending with John's and Sarah's, singing Imagine, was a wave of pure, unadulterated emotion. It was a collective catharsis, a shared moment of grief and hope that transcended the boundaries of the stage and the seats. John, standing beside Sarah, his arms still around her, felt the power of it. The tears that streamed down his own face were not just for Michael or for Sarah, but for every lost dream, every broken heart, every silent struggle in that vast arena. This was the immediate consequence of his decision, a transformation of a concert into a sacred, communal experience. As the final notes of Imagine faded, the arena was silent once more, but it was a different silence. It was a silence filled with reverence, with shared understanding, with the echoes of a profound connection. Sarah, though still tearful, stood taller, a fragile strength emanating from her. The act of singing, of sharing her brother's favorite song with John Lennon and 10,000 strangers, had lifted a part of her unbearable burden. John, his voice still thick with emotion, spoke into the microphone. "Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for sharing Michael with us. He would be very proud." He then turned to the audience. "And thank you, all of you, for being here tonight, for being human, for reminding us all that we are not alone in this." He spent the next 20 minutes on stage with Sarah. He didn't immediately launch into another song. Instead, he talked to her, quietly, intimately, about Michael. He asked about his dreams, his personality, the little things that made him unique. He shared stories of his own youth, of the struggles and joys of growing up, creating a bridge between his legendary past and her present grief. He spoke of how music had always been his refuge, his way of making sense of a chaotic world, and how he hoped it could be the same for her. The audience listened with rapt attention, feeling like they were part of something far more significant than a concert. They were witnessing a raw, unscripted act of compassion, a testament to the power of human connection. The usual demands for encores, for more hits, were forgotten. All that mattered was this moment, this shared space of healing. As their conversation drew to a close, John made a quiet yet powerful gesture. He took off the guitar he had been playing, a vintage acoustic, and handed it to Sarah. "This was Michael's dream, wasn't it?" he said, his voice gentle. "To play guitar, to make music. Don't let that dream die, Sarah. Keep it alive. For him, for yourself." Sarah, speechless, clutched the guitar to her chest, her eyes wide with disbelief and gratitude. It was more than a gift. It was a symbol, a torch passed, a promise of continuity. John then turned to his road manager, whispering a few words. The manager nodded, then discreetly led Sarah backstage, not for removal, but for a quiet conversation, a warm meal, and an offer of genuine support, ensuring she had a safe way home and resources if she needed them. The consequences of this encounter were profound for John. The act of stopping the show, of allowing himself to be vulnerable, had stripped away layers of his own carefully constructed persona. He had confronted not just Sarah's pain, but the echoes of his own fractured youth, the secret burden of his own unaddressed grief. In comforting her, he had, in a way, comforted himself. He returned to the center of the stage, picked up another guitar, and the music resumed. But it was different now. His voice, his presence, carried a new weight, a new resonance. The performance was no longer just entertainment. It was a communion, a shared journey through the complexities of the human heart. John Lennon, the protagonist, had not just survived a disruption, he had transcended it, emerging not as a legend reinforced, but as a man profoundly reconnected to the very humanity he sought to inspire. The transformation was not a sudden cure, but a profound shift, a reminder that even the most iconic figures are, at their core, simply human, capable of immense pain and even greater compassion. The concert concluded, not with a triumphant roar, but with a lingering sense of profound connection. The audience, leaving the arena, carried with them not just the memory of the music, but the indelible image of John Lennon, the legend, kneeling beside a crying teenager, sharing a moment of raw human vulnerability. The story of that night, of John stopping an entire concert for Sarah Miller, spread not through sensational headlines, but through whispers, through eyewitness accounts, through the collective memory of 10,000 people who had been there. It became a legend, a testament to the unpredictable power of empathy in a world often consumed by indifference. Sarah, the teenager, carried John's guitar home, a tangible symbol of a night that had changed her life. She would later speak of how that moment, that unexpected act of kindness, had given her the strength to navigate her grief, to keep Michael's memory alive, not through sorrow, but through the music he loved. She learned to play that guitar, her fingers tracing the same frets John's had, finding solace and purpose in the melodies. She never became a rock star, but she became a music therapist, using the healing power of song to help others navigate their own pain, a direct ripple effect of John's compassion. John, too, was changed. The incident had peeled back layers of his own defenses, reminding him of the profound responsibility that came with his platform. He continued to perform, to create, but with a renewed sense of purpose, a deeper understanding of the fragile line between artist and audience, between the icon and the human heart. He understood that sometimes the most revolutionary act was not a protest song, but a simple gesture of kindness, a moment of shared vulnerability. He began to seek out those moments, those quiet connections in every city, in every crowd, understanding that true impact often lay beyond the glare of the spotlight. Years later, long after the roar of the crowd had faded into history and the legend of John Lennon had taken its final, tragic turn, the memory of that night in the arena lingered. It was a reminder that even in the most public of spectacles, the most profound truths often emerge from the most unexpected places. It was a testament to the idea that beneath the layers of fame, anger, and disillusionment, there lies a universal yearning for connection, for understanding, for a moment when someone truly sees us. The stage, now empty, stands silent. The echoes of music, of cheers, of a single desperate cry, have long since dissipated into the ether. But the question remains, suspended in the quiet hum of memory. What if in our own lives, when confronted by another's pain, by the desperate cries of the lost, we chose not to recoil, not to judge, but to simply see? What if, like John Lennon on that unforgettable night, we dared to stop our own relentless rhythm, to offer not defiance, but a hand, a listening ear, a moment of shared humanity? For in that choice, in that unexpected act of grace, lies the true power to stun, to transform, and perhaps to heal not just a single soul, but the very fabric of the world around us. The music, after all, was always about more than just notes. It was about connection. And sometimes, the most powerful connection is forged in the silence, in the space between the songs, when a legend dares to be simply, profoundly human.